Hi, sorry about that. YouTube started playing from my previous video, and then I got a little bit confused. But anyway, I'm back here for the second of two parts here about plagiarism. As I was saying, copying and pasting and then putting quotation marks around something, it's not plagiarism, but it's not necessarily showing understanding. Okay, so you could look at a teacher and say, well, I didn't plagiarize. Well, that's great, but are you actually demonstrating understanding by simply copying and pasting somebody else's work? You might be showing that you can gather relevant information, but gathering information is only part of actually producing an academic work. All right, and the third thing that I want to mention is using information from a source without attribution, okay? So what that basically means is not citing your sources, not having a works cited or a bibliography section. So for instance, if the question was asked, what made New York City grow more quickly than cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Boston? Well, the answer that I provided there is something that I wrote. I didn't paraphrase too closely. I didn't copy and paste from anything. But I also don't have any sources cited there, right? And that's where you get into something called common knowledge. You don't necessarily have to cite anything, everything rather, if it'd be considered common knowledge. So, that there's 24 hours in a day, or that we live on planet Earth, or that New York City touches the Atlantic Ocean, that would be considered common knowledge. You probably don't have to cite sources for that. Tricky part is everybody's common knowledge is a little bit different. But as you can see from my answer here, saying that the Erie Canal was finished in 1824, or saying that the early version of the New York Stock Exchange was established in 1792, or to talk about the revolutions in Germany in 1848. That's not common knowledge, right? I wouldn't fall out of bed and just start and know that there were revolutions in Germany in 1848. So if that's the case, then I need to make sure I'm citing the sources that I used in order to get that information. What are some ways to avoid plagiarism when you look at all these things? Well, one is to identify what's perhaps common knowledge and what's not. Another thing would be to make sure you manage your time. I find that when I have my 8th graders plagiarize, unfortunately, that a lot of it doesn't have to do with people being bad or people trying to do the wrong thing. It has to do with a little bit of panicking because of time management. So, you have 2 weeks or 3 weeks to work on a project, or you have plenty of time to start a paper, but you don't get started, and you get bogged down, and you have to complete it. So as a result, you end up panicking a little bit, and you might make some mistakes with plagiarism because your time management didn't go so well. And a third way to avoid plagiarism is to cite your sources as you go. Sometimes the projects that you end up working on academically, maybe you were researching for weeks, sometimes even months. But if there's something that you looked up 3 weeks ago, and now you're using it in your paper, you're using it in your project, but you can't remember where you got it from, well, that could lead to accidental plagiarism as well. So if you think, if there's a thought in your head that you might end up using this source later on down the line, write it down, write down the title, write down the author, write down the URL, right, the www, so that you can go back and find it later. And that will save you from some plagiarizing as well. All right, so that talks about plagiarism a little bit. It's not a fun topic necessarily, but it's good for your academic growth that we talk about this a little bit. Another thing you have to do is answer just a couple questions here, and hopefully you found that informative. I will see you again on Monday as we get back into our evidence unit. I think we're going to probably look at some maps and how to read a map and what maps might tell us. All right, so have a good luck with this. Please email me or send me a comment in Google Classroom if you have any questions, and I will see you again, or you'll see me again on Monday. Have a nice weekend, everybody.